Well, hello everybody, and welcome to your favorite NFL podcast. This week, we're coming at you with a very special playoff preview edition of Students of the Game here with my boy Elijah Freeman. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing good. How about you, Justin? It's the most wonderful time of the year, playoff season.
Nothing is better than the NFL playoffs. I'm right there with you. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about the 4 wildcard matchups we got going on. We'll start first off with the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Houston Texans. It's the first game of the 4. In Week 1, the Chiefs played at I think was it in Houston? Let me look.
It was in Houston. They
opened
up the season at NRG Stadium or whatever they call that thing.
Yep. So the Chiefs ended up winning that game 27-20. Not that it really matters though, because that was a very long time ago. And so let's just get our free discussion going on with this game. What are you looking at between the two teams?
Well, the Kansas City Chiefs are, to me, the most amazing team in all of the NFL. To win their first game, as you suggested, 27-20 over the Houston Texans, then lose 5 in a row, and lose Jamal Charles. I thought this team was a contender for the number 1 overall pick, but then they go win 10 straight games, doing it with Chuck West and Spencer Ware out of the backfield. I mean, Alex Smith has a solid season, 20 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, and they somehow they managed to win all of these games. The only argument against that is they didn't play a lot of great teams. The close to the season featured a number of different teams: Baltimore, Cleveland, Oakland. In the last couple of weeks, they played San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego too. Yeah.
Teams picking pretty high in the draft coming up here in a couple of months. So this is a good test for them to see if this whole 10-game winning streak, the longest in the NFL right now, that's still going, is a mirage or if it really is legit, because this is a Chiefs franchise that is starved for a playoff win. They have not had one since before I was born.
Right.
So, I mean, this is a fascinating game to me, mainly because the Chiefs are so unbelievably hot that you wonder if it's fool's gold because they haven't played a defense as good as the Texans, because there aren't many defenses like that in the NFL to play against. I mean, the Texans are just rolling on defense. In their last 9 games, they're doing up about 12.5 points a game. I was a stat that I saw earlier this week. And it's thanks to guys like Watt, Merciless, Clowney, even a little bit of a coming on for him as of late. And they've shut people down. The Kansas City has also been shutting people down. So I'm expecting a relatively low-scoring game. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
I would say that another thing when you point out I want to talk about overcoming injuries. Both of these teams are without their starting running backs, and 2 very good ones at that. And it's amazing that they've been able to come this far, as they can't really rely on the quarterback play, unlike some of these other teams we have going on here. But another injury that has to be talked about when we talk about this game is obviously the big injury to Dwayne Brown, the left tackle for the Texans, an all-pro at that if you've never heard of him before. He got hurt last game, carted off the field. He obviously is out for the rest of the season with a big injury. And that's really going to hurt, especially going up against Kansas City, who features Justin Houston and features Tamba Ali. And they're going to get after Brian Hoyer and just make his life miserable, most likely. So I'm not sure how they're going to be able to replace one of the best left tackles in the conference. And that's just really going to be a key for me. Justin Houston struggled with injuries recently, but he's going to play. And the only others notables on the injury report for Houston, Clowney and Nate Washington, are questionable. So we'll see how that goes. So I think if Houston can't protect Hoyer, there's no chance they have to win, because you know how good Ali and Houston are. They're going to wreck the game. The question then relies on, can J.J. Watt win a game by himself? We just don't know if he can do that. In your opinion, how can Houston win this game?
Well, you kind of just said it, although I don't even think J.J. Watt has to win this game by himself. Are you aware of what Whitney Merciless has been doing lately? On the other side of Watt, he got double-digit sacks, too. Between the 2 of them, those guys have 28 sacks this season. That's the most of any duo in the NFL, as I understand it. So, I mean, Merciless ruined the game for the Jaguars last Sunday just as much as Watt did. And so I think there's a chance maybe that they could get after Alex Smith, because the Chiefs' pass protection, I mean, it's been fairly decent. Alex Smith hasn't been sacked a lot, but 45 times is not nothing. I mean, that's got to be middle of the league, if not higher.
Right.
So I think this might be a game where you see a whole lot of sacks piled up by both of these, because there's some great edge rushers coming off the edge and some suspect offensive lines, especially on Houston's side. I will grant you that. But I think if there's a chance for the Texans to win this game, it's going to be because of their defense. and it's going to be because they are able to shut down the run and the pass, mainly keyed off of Watt, but also Merciless, Vince Wilfork stuffing the middle. And if Clowney plays, that's an added bonus. But then again, he hasn't been a huge factor for them. He has at times flashed some potential that we know he has, but hasn't always shown it, obviously, thanks to injuries at some point and just general ineffectiveness at others. But I think you're hinting towards a strong sentiment the Chiefs' way. Is that what I'm kind of getting from you?
What do you mean? You mean I think that Kansas City is going to win this game?
That's kind of seems to be the direction you're heading.
Well, yeah. Before we talk about who wins, I wanted to talk about a little bit some matchups. I'm really looking forward to Marcus Peters and DeAndre Hopkins in this game. We've all seen what Hopkins has done this year, one of the best wide receiver performances in the league this season. Then you look on the other side, Marcus Peters, the crazy amount of interceptions. He's going to a Pro Bowl in his rookie season. He's played phenomenal. I'm looking forward to that matchup a lot. And you talk about all these pass rushers we're going to see. I think the team that wins this game is going to win the turnover ratio, in my opinion. Just because when your quarterback gets under pressure, it's going to be the quarterback who's the smartest with the ball. And if you break that down, Alex Smith is very good at not turning the football over. That's who he is. We know who Alex Smith, and they call him the game manager, this, that, and the other thing. Say that if you want, but he doesn't turn the ball over very much. And that's where I'm concerned that Brian Hoyer then becomes the weak link for the Texans. So if we talk about who's going to win, yeah, personally, I am going to go with Kansas City in this game just because Dwayne Brown, I think, is a huge deal for him not being able to play for Houston. And whoever they put on the left side is going to have probably a bad day against those two pass rushers when they rotate them on both sides. But I think it'll be a relatively low scoring, like you said, just because of the defensive line play that we have. But I think the turnover battle will be huge. But yes, I like Kansas City.
Well, before you go around saying that Alex Smith just doesn't turn the football over, I would remind you he had 7 interceptions this season. That is true. But in his last 4 games, he threw 4 of them. So, I mean, it's not like he just avoided turnovers. He did kind of have a giant section in there where there was 8 or 9 games where he didn't throw a pick. He threw 2 picks in Oakland, and that was a close game. He threw a pick against Cleveland. He threw a pick against San Diego. I mean, it's not like he was kind of closing the season strong and turning it over. I agree that Brian Hoyer is more turnover prone. It's not like Alex Smith hasn't shown a little bit of a propensity to toss a few away here lately, and that's kept teams like Cleveland and Oakland in games that they probably shouldn't have been otherwise. So I guess also for the sake of contrarian podcasts, I'm going to roll with the Houston Texans. I like Watt. I like Merciless. I think that they can chip guys like Houston and Ali, and maybe give some help to whoever they've got on the left and right sides. And I don't have a whole lot of reason for picking the Texans, perhaps. They are the home team, if that matters to you. And maybe you could argue that Kansas City's wins have been just kind of against some subpar competition. They've beaten Pittsburgh and beaten Denver kind of when they forced Peyton Manning into pseudo-retirement for a while. But other than that, all these 500 or below teams, and that's who they've beaten on this 10-game winning streak. So I'm gonna roll with Houston. This might come back to Birmingham, but my boy DeAndre Hopkins, I think, will manage to show up in this game as insanely productive as he's been, despite the 4 different quarterbacks he's played under.
So another thing to point out, remember last year in the playoffs, Kansas City was up 31-10 at the half against Andrew Luck and the Colts and ended up losing that game. I think that game is a motivator for Kansas City and gets them to win this game. I just don't know where Houston's going to find their offense outside of Hopkins because you know that Kansas City's going to put a lot of tension over there, and I personally believe that the Chiefs are going to run the ball better than Houston. So I like Houston in this game, or I like Kansas City in this game. Now moving on, now we'll go to our second matchup on Saturday, or on Friday, or Saturday, sorry, at night between the Steelers and the Bengals. And a quick fact for you before we begin. In the last 26 games, I believe, when Pittsburgh traveled to Cincinnati, they've won every one of those games except 4 of them. I believe they are 14-3 at Paul Brown Stadium since it was put into place in 2000. So not a whole lot of success for the Bengals at home against Pittsburgh, and they haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. What do you think, Elijah?
Yeah, I think it was either yesterday or today was the 25th anniversary of their last playoff victory that happened against the Houston Oilers, the team that isn't even in that state or city anymore. So it's been a long time. We're talking a whole quarter century, and it's got to happen at some point, right? I mean, but you got to be thinking of the Bengals. this could have been the year. Andy Dalton was playing great. He was avoiding turnovers, as we've been talking about all season. They had Tyler Eifert catching double-digit touchdowns. A.J. Green found the end zone twice. They had a nice 1-2 punch going with Bernard and Hill. Things were just fine and dandy until Andy Dalton throws a pick, one of the rare ones this season, breaks his thumb trying to tackle the returner, who's a Steeler. Of course it's the Steelers. If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you got to think that the Steelers are the Charlie Brown. Isn't that Charlie Brown Lucy clip where she pulls the football away just as he's about to kick it and he winds up on the ground? That's what the Steelers. That's what the Steelers have been doing to Cincinnati pretty much for the last quarter century. And this is Cincinnati's chance to turn it around. A.J. McCarron, he's had 3 games that he started, correct? And then that game against Pittsburgh where he had almost the whole game.
Yes.
And so if you look at some of his stats, it might be the same argument I was just using about the Chiefs. Kind of like they played, San Francisco. They just played Baltimore. So maybe you're not impressed by that. They did play Denver in there as well, and he lost that, wound up losing that game and lost the game against Pittsburgh that he had to come in and kind of play as the unprepared backup. So what are your feelings on how McCarron has done? Because he's going to be starting this game as Dalton is still hurt.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it really comes down to. We talk about the lack of success that Andy Dalton has had in the playoffs, so I feel like maybe this is a good thing for Cincinnati, kind of. I mean, when we think about it, now they don't have to worry about getting Andy Dalton his playoff win because he's not going to be playing. They're going to be rolling with A.J. McCarron, obviously. And, when I break down this game, I think that the loss, of course, we'll talk about injuries quick, is DeAngelo Williams is probably not going to play in this game for Pittsburgh. And we know how fantastic he's been with Le'Veon Bell out, but the good thing for the Steelers is Martavis Bryant will likely play, and for Cincinnati, good news, Tyler Eifert will be able to go, but again, probably not going to play Andy Dalton. But again, I think the DeAngelo Williams injury is huge for Pittsburgh because they're going to have to run with Jordan Todman and Fitzgerald Toussaint, so that's going to be really tough for the Steelers on the road against the Bengals and their good defense. And I tell you what, Cincinnati's had a really good secondary this year, very under the radar, and they've done a good job against Antonio Brown this year. And I don't know, it's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough without D-Will, and with Antonio Brown struggles against Cincinnati, they've played really well against the Steelers. Other than obviously in Week 16, they got beat again at home to the Steelers in the game where the Steelers won 33-20. So. I like Cincinnati in this game. I don't know what it is without Andy Dalton. Obviously, we think that they would have a better chance if Dalton was playing. But I don't know. I like Cincinnati. What about you?
Well, you said that Antonio Brown struggled in the games. I'm looking at his stats here in the games that he's played against Cincinnati. At one time, he did have 6 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. That's nothing special. They lost that game 16-10 on the 1st of November. Then a couple of weeks ago on Week 14, when they won that game, in Cincinnati, he had 7 catches for 87 yards. So, for a lot of receivers, those are good numbers. For Antonio Brown, those are very bad numbers because he's like the greatest wide receiver on the planet.
Exactly.
So he's struggled, I guess but I would call that struggling. But you also mentioned in lieu of Fitzgerald Toussaint is the guy that they're going to be rolling with in lieu of DeAngelo Williams. I don't even know who that is.
Right, and they're going to go with Jordan Todman. And another thing, too, we think about the Steelers on offensive line. They're going to start Alejandro Villanueva and have Cody Wallace at center and Marcus Gilbert at right tackle. They're hurting there, too. We know how good Carlos Dunlap is coming off the edge. I like Cincinnati in this game. The only way I see Pittsburgh winning this game is on defense, or if Ben Roethlisberger carries them, which we know he's definitely capable of, but we know he's probably going to be under pressure and without much of a running game. I like Cincinnati in this game. Are you with me or not?
Well, the thing is the Steelers have such an incredibly dangerous offense, and so you like what they can do. You said Bryant's going to be playing. Obviously, Antonio Brown, Marcus Wheaton. They can even throw it to Heath Miller, old reliable underneath. But what worries me about the Steelers is in Ben Roethlisberger's last 3 games, he's thrown 6 picks.
That's another point, yes.
He's even a worse kind of example than Alex Smith, where I was saying Smith has thrown a few more picks as of late. Roethlisberger actually, for the amount of games he's played, he threw 16 interceptions by only playing 12 games. It's kind of a little bit boom or bust for Big Ben. Tons of yards, insane yards per attempt of 8.4, and they got all those weapons. But you said the Bengals have some guys that can pick it off. Reggie Nelson led the league, or tied for the league lead in interceptions with 8. So the Bengals can turn you over. The only thing is, where's their offense going to come from? Because do you trust McCarron to win the big game that Andy Dalton never could win?
Well, yeah, and I think the only way that Cincinnati has success on offense is obviously in the running game with Bernard and Hill, and it's been such a weird season for those two because it seems like when one starts to feel like they take over the featured role, the other one starts to play better. If Cincinnati can't run the ball in this game, they're in big trouble. Just because, I mean, you can't possibly trust A.J. McCarron to win this game by himself. I think he can have some success in the short passes, but they need to get him in the play-action passing game, which requires the running game to get going early, and that'll be key. This game could be won or lost in the first half, which is very possible if Cincinnati can't find a way to run the ball. But like I said, I would just really like to see Cincinnati get over the hump and get a playoff win for their fans who deserve one so desperately.
Oh, gosh, me too. I just don't know if I can actually do it. Again, Pittsburgh has been the big bully, the big brother of Cincinnati. They've just been kind of taking a giant dump on them for forever. And longer than you and I have been alive. It's just been Pittsburgh dominating this, if you even want to call it a rivalry, because like you said, they even win in Cincinnati Stadium, which is where this game is going to be played. And you can even remember 10 years ago, that Bengals team should probably have gone to the Super Bowl, but on the second play from scrimmage, a Steeler rolls into Carson Palmer's knee, and he's never the same until pretty much this season is when he returns to what he was then. And it's kind of, Pittsburgh's been doing this to Cincinnati for a very long time. Will they do it again on Saturday evening? You say no. And I think I'm going to have to pick against you here just because that Steelers offense, Antonio Brown, Montavis Bryant's a giant freakazoid, and Marcus Wheaton can do all this sort of stuff. They may not even need D'Angelo Williams if they can score all over the field. And plus, Williams is only questionable, correct?
Hey, what'd you say?
Williams is questionable for this game, or is he worse than that?
Well, Williams was in a boot yesterday, so, I mean, they say questionable, but I'm feeling like he's not going to play in this game just because of the fact that he's still in a boot. So, obviously, the Steelers are being smart by not disclosing if he'll play or not. They want Cincinnati to prepare for him to play if he does or doesn't. But I like the Bengals secondary. Adam Jones has played really well this year. Dre Kirkpatrick is Dre Kirkpatrick, and Leon Hall has played well as also. And if George Iloka plays, I like their chances. I like the Bengals in this game just because of their defense. I like Carlos Dunlap, what he can do, and Geno Atkins, of course. I think that they're going to do just enough to shut down the Steelers' passing attack. And also, the Steelers have allowed a franchise record for passing yards this year. So I feel like A.J. McCarron's going to be able to have some success in this game, just enough to get it done. All right.
I kind of agree with you that it's going to depend on if they can run the ball. And if they can't, then if I'm McCarron's shoulders, then I guess I would be much less confident if I'm a Bengals fan, if that's the case.
All right. Well, moving on now to the NFC side of things, where both of our teams exist, but only one of them is in the playoffs. We'll talk about that later. But we're more familiar with the NFC side of things. We'll start it off, of course, with Seattle and Minnesota. The game will start at noon on Sunday on NBC. And, this is an interesting game. Not only are we going to have one of the coldest games in terms of weather in NFL history, we also have the return of Marshawn Lynch for Seattle. And the last time these two teams met, they met in Week 13 this year. Seattle won 38-7, where this game will be played in Minnesota. What are your thoughts of this game?
Well, first of all, like you said, I hope that weather forecast remains true. It doesn't get any warmer because I'm glad I don't have to be out there, but I love football games in the cold and the bad weather. There's dome stuff. I like football games outside, in the elements, in the winter. In Minnesota, they're going to move back inside, next summer and have all their games in there for the rest of however long that stadium is cool. So I'm glad that the Vikings get to have an outdoor playoff game in Seattle. And it just feels about right for Marshawn Lynch to be coming back. He's missed so much of this season with the injury and the surgery, and now he's finally coming back. And it's probably a good thing because Seattle's running game has kind of tanked in the absence of both him and then, of course, when Thomas Rawls got hurt. So now he's coming back, but the question is, how effective is Marshawn Lynch coming in, having not played in a game? And I don't even remember how long. When was the last time Lynch took a snap and played game action?
I think he's missed 7 games in a row, if I do remember correctly. But
so it's been a long time since Lynch was, and so you wonder, especially in a game where it's real cold on his 28, 29-year-old body, whatever it is he get going? Is he the same Marshawn Lynch? Is he even quite the same? Or is he just sort of unable to recapture that magic? But even then, Russell Wilson is playing at such a high level, they might not even need Lynch because, oh my gosh, he's been on a tear.
Right. So that's the thing. But we talk about the weather. It's going to be miserable throwing the ball in this weather. We know that to be true. But again, Marshawn Lynch, that's just a big question mark right now. We haven't seen him play in so long. I would like to say that we're going to see the same Marshawn Lynch, but an angry Marshawn Lynch because he hasn't played in so long. I think he wants the league, Seahawk fans, to see him come back and play well, and I think he will. I think Marshawn Lynch plays well in this game. J.R. Sweezy should play for Seattle. He missed last week's game. But the big question marks for Seattle, and Luke Wilson is questionable for this game, and so is Tyler Lockett, the electrifying returner, and also an improving wide receiver for Russell Wilson. So those remain to be seen. And so then we talk about Marshawn Lynch. Now we move to the other side of the ball because obviously running the ball is going to be important in this game. Adrian Peterson, league-leading rusher this season, a great year for Adrian. But against the Seahawks in that Week 13 game, 18 rushing yards for Adrian Peterson. Seattle is always known for being one of the best defenses and was again this year. And we know the struggles of Teddy Bridgewater, and we've seen them, 99 passing yards against the Packers last week. I'd be surprised if he eclipses 100 in this game just because of the weather and how good Seattle's secondary is. I'm really struggling to see where Minnesota's going to get their offense from.
Right. Well, but I think at the same time, you said the 18 yards for Peterson. That was on 8 carries, if my memory serves me correctly.
It was something. It was low, but you know what I mean.
Right. So the thing is, they didn't give him a lot of carries because that game got really out of hand. I think it was already 38-0 before you could pretty much blink an eye, or at least 31-0 or whatever. It was a game that sort of all of a sudden the game was pretty much over, and then they abandoned the run, which kind of makes sense, trying to just in desperation to come up with anything. Now, Bridgewater's playing a little bit better, but like you said, I don't even know why he bothered throwing the ball if the ball is hard as a rock because it's 0 degrees outside. So you hand the ball to Peterson, who I'm going to hope for Vikings fans' sake is okay after he kind of tweaked his ankle a little bit.
Yeah, he's also questionable. He's also questionable for this game, but I expect him to play. So
I would expect him to play as well. He's obviously excellent. He had an amazing season. He found the end zone quite a bit, but one of his games was against Seattle. So now you wonder, does Seattle kind of shut him down again? I think the Vikings have to be more persistent with the run, even if they get down in this game, because again, the conditions being what they are, and Bridgewater he had some good games towards the end of the season, played pretty well against the Cardinals, played pretty well against the Bears, obviously, when they rolled them, and also played well against the Giants. But those defenses are not Seattle's defense, which is the leading scoring defense in the NFL for the 4th straight year.
Right, and this game, it's just interesting to me just because the weather is going to make this so weird, and you might think that the weather might help Minnesota in terms of, limiting the amazing passing attack that we've seen from the Seahawks, Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson recently. And while I think that's somewhat, also true, but this is just going to make the passing game for Minnesota even worse. I don't think Adrian Peterson runs for 100 yards in this game, and I also don't think Teddy Bridgewater throws for much more than 150. So, like I said, I don't know where Minnesota's offense comes from. The only chance they're going to have is winning the turnover battle like we've talked about and trying to force, Seattle to throw, by loading the box against Lynch too. It'll be interesting. Who do you got in this game? You go first this time.
Well, you kind of just said, they have to win the turnover battle, but lately Russell Wilson has not been throwing a whole lot of interceptions.
Exactly.
I mean, he has thrown 3 in his last 5 games, and some of those, never mind, I'm looking at his first games of this season. Never mind, he actually has thrown very few in his last 5 games. I don't even think any. But earlier this season, he rolled. He threw 3 touchdown passes against the Vikings, completed almost 80% of his passes. He's on a tear. But Tyler Lockett was a huge part of that, I think, anyways. It goes Baldwin, and then his next favorite target, it seemed to me, towards the end of the season was Tyler Lockett. So if he doesn't play, is he out, you said?
No, he's questionable. Lockett is questionable. We don't know if he's going to play or not. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a coin flip on there. Lockett's obviously exceptional in 2 areas, both on special teams and, of course, running receiving routes on offense. So if he's out or limited, that kind of tamps down the Seahawks passing attack, as does the cold weather. So then it's more on Lynch, and I just don't know what we're going to get from Lynch, but I assume it will be enough. And I think the defense for Seattle is better than the Vikings defense, although that is a pretty solid unit in and of itself. I wouldn't expect a lot of points in this game either way. There will not be 38 points put up by either the Seahawks or the Vikings, in my estimation. All that having been said, Seattle, they're a hot team. They have a stingy defense. They have a stud returning, and even if they realize early on in the game that he's not terribly effective coming back, Russell Wilson can also do a little magic, even if the ground is frozen and whatnot, and it's kind of tough to throw the ball. He is a threat to scramble and whatnot. I'm going to pick Seattle in this game. I think the Vikings have had an amazing season. They won the NFC North. Congratulations to them from this begrudging Packer fan. But I don't think they're going to win this game at home because Seattle has too many pieces, and Wilson is just on a tear. He's so hot he might melt the field in this game. I'm taking Seattle in what should be a close, kind of hard-nosed game because it's going to be no degrees outside. But you're right. Where is the Vikings' offense going to come from if Peterson doesn't have a monster game? And he had his worst game of the season, quite possibly, last time.
Right. So when we break it down a little more analytically, when we look at the safeties for Seattle in Thomas and Chancellor, that's going to be extremely tough with the weather, especially for a guy like Bridgewater, who's not a very good downfield passer, to extend the field and to throw the ball down the field, stretch it. I don't think that's possible to happen. So then what's Seattle going to do? They're going to play their tight press coverage, what they like to do with their big physical corners, Richard Sherman, Jeremy Lane, all those guys at the line of scrimmage. They're going to jam these receivers. I think the only way Minnesota has some success is in the short passing game, but I don't think Seattle's going to allow it to happen. And while this game may be low scoring, I think Seattle wins quite handily.
Okay, so we have a little bit of agreement here on Seattle. Watch the Vikings go in and just win this game anyways.
Oh, and also one thing I forgot to mention too, Linval Joseph, who missed the game against the Packers, is also questionable for this game. If he's not there, that's going to be tough for stopping the run as well. So we'll see how it goes for Minnesota. Yeah, I'd like to see it a competitive game, but I just don't know if we will get one or not. So moving on to your favorite matchup of the week and the most anticipated for most Packer fans, we have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Landover to take on the Redskins, who are 9-7, won the NFC East. Let's see. One interesting point about the Redskins, though, despite their very phenomenal end of the season under Kirk Cousins, they have not beaten a team with a winning record this season, and they are the only team in the playoffs to do that. So that's interesting. But they are 6-2 at home. Give me your early thoughts, Mr. Packer fan.
Well, here's the thing. They didn't play a team with a winning record. Didn't beat, I should say, a team with a winning record this season. But honestly, if you look at the second half of the season, the Packers don't have a winning record. I mean, they're 4-6 in their last couple of games. They've lost back-to-back. They got embarrassed against the Cardinals. They were lethargic in coming back against the Vikings with the division crown on the line. And they really thought Washington was kind of an easier out than playing the Vikings again, which is the other option if they managed to win the game. They'd be the 3 and Minnesota would be the 6 seed. I don't think you should take Washington lightly, though, especially when you go to Washington, because Kirk Cousins.
You like that?
You like that? Captain Kirk, as we like to call him, Captain with a K, which is a lot of fun. I like that. And
Captain
you should trademark
Kirk.
that along with the phrase "you like that." He plays so good at home. Very questionable and kind of shaky, mediocre play on the road at best. But at home, he is torching people, and that's where this game is going to be played. They have to go to this place where Kirk Cousins, I don't even know how good his stats are at home. Very few interceptions of the ones that he's thrown. A lot of the touchdowns, and they're playing hot wherever they go. They're kind of just torching people in and out of Washington. But the Packers have to go on the road where they're 5-3, kind of the same record as at home. But I think the Redskins, they're playing so well, and Captain Kirk is tearing people up, whether he's throwing it to Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed, the hottest tight end in the NFL right now, Jamison Crowder, the rookie receiver who had almost 60 catches this season. But there's a lot of pieces, and on the other side, where the Packers receiving corps gone? It has been a shame.
It's been bad. We talk about the struggles with Green Bay, and it's been weird for me. Obviously living here in Wisconsin, seeing the Packers offense put up 500 yards and 40 points week in, week out, it seems like, and it's just frustrating for me to see that. But it's so weird because this is something we have not seen from Aaron Rodgers probably ever. And this Packers offense looks nothing like it usually does. And it's like week after week, I'm sitting here and I just assume like, oh, this is the week we're finally going to see Aaron Rodgers throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns like he used to do. And it just hasn't happened yet. And people, unfortunately, some are blaming this on Aaron Rodgers. Please knock it off, okay? This isn't number 12's fault. Yes, he is the best quarterback in the NFL, but he needs help. And these wide receivers have just gotten zero separation all season. I don't know what happened to Randall Cobb. He used to be one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the league coming out of the slot. He can't even get open anymore. So I don't know what they're going to do, But I want to talk about the Captain Kirk a little bit more. How do you think the Packers can shut down Washington's offense?
Well, here's the thing. I've actually found the stats in terms of the home-away splits. His completion percentage at home is 74.7, which is amazing. That's 3/4 of his passes. He has 16 of his 29 touchdowns at home, only 2 of his 11 interceptions. His passer rating is 117. I mean, at home he has owned people. And the thing is, the Redskins have better weapons right now to work with Kirk Cousins than the Packers do Micah Hyde, who's kind of a versatile dude to play either safety or corner. I don't know about the prognosis of Sam Shields. I'm guessing it's not good.
He's currently questionable. He was still in concussion protocol yesterday, which is mind-boggling to me. It seems like it's taken him a very long time to overcome this. Even if he does...
got hurt in the Dallas game.
I know.
Was 3 weeks ago.
It's a long time ago for a concussion, which makes me believe that it's not good news for Sam Shields. And even if he does play, he's obviously not going to be 100%. We just don't know what he's going to be like. So then... we start talking about now, we switch how in the world is Green Bay going to be able to stop Washington's offense with Jordan Reed? I'm going to break it down a little more analytically again for you guys. Jordan Reed's been one of the hottest NFL tight ends, and he does it up the seam with his speed. He's one of the best over the middle of the field. So then Green Bay, we both know that Green Bay doesn't have a linebacker that can keep pace with Jordan Reed, which means that they're going to have to look towards their safeties who are more than capable of covering Jordan Reed. The problem with that is then you leave Deshaun Jackson, one of the fastest receivers in the NFL and the best with the deep ball, one-on-one with either rookie corners or less than 100% Sam Shields, and you're asking for it then. So then I don't know what...
Could you possibly say, could they use Clay Matthews to try to cover Jordan?
There is no way. There is no way. No way.
And plus, even then, you'd be taking him away from the job of trying to rush the passer and play the inside linebacker that he's actually quite suited for. But you look at Jordan Reed, 11 touchdowns that he's accumulated this season. That's got to be about tops in the NFL in terms of tight end. 87 catches, 952 yards. Like I said, finding the end zone all the time.
And finally healthy for really the first time in his career, which is why we're finally seeing his outbreak, because he's finally healthy for once.
Well, he's been even really just hot closing out the stretch as well. If you look at the last couple of games that he's played for the Redskins, he accumulated 5 of his touchdowns in the last 4 games. He had 11 catches for 129 yards against the Eagles.
And I watched that game. He was flat out dominant against Philadelphia because I watched that first half, both the touchdowns in the first half. And, he would have had more. Obviously, that game last week against Dallas was not competitive at all, so obviously he didn't play much. He could have been even better. So Jordan Reed's going to be a tough task for Green Bay. But good news for the Packers offense, though, they're going up against probably the worst defense in the playoffs, 28th overall in yards, and I believe 30th, or one of the worst in the league in yards per carry. They give up 5 yards of pop on the ground, which is important because we talk Eddie Lacy's questionable. We don't know I'm assuming he's going to play, but we don't know how effective he's going to be. The Packers got to run the ball to win this game.
Well, here's the thing. You can say that they can have a bad rushing defense, which is, we would think would be good news. Even if Lacy is healthy, I still don't know what to expect from him. This guy, I'm not sure if it's how they want to use him, if he winds up in the doghouse every other week, because sometimes he gets a lot of carries that are very effective. Sometimes he gets a lot of carries that is not effective at all. Sometimes he gets a few carries and he's actually kind of effective, and then they somehow forget about him. And sometimes he's just completely ineffective, like last week when he got 2.6 yards a carry. But I don't know what to expect from him. Honestly, in some of these games this season, they've had more success using Randall Cobb as the guy in the backfield. And I don't know what to make of James Starks. He seems to have disappeared kind of lately since since that Dallas game over the last 3 weeks. I don't know. The Packers' offensive line is banged up. Are they going to have Josh Sitton back to the place he should be instead of trying to be a left tackle, which was a bad idea?
Yes, it was.
I don't know. It was depressing the last couple of weeks to see them just get wrecked by Arizona with 8 or 9 sacks or whatever it was and all the strip fumbles. It happened again last week. That kind of was a key point in the game because they lost the game by 7, which is the exact amount of points put up on that turnover play that the Vikings ran back a fumble. So can they protect Rodgers? Even if they can, does anybody get open because the Packers have the slowest receivers in the NFL? So maybe they can run the ball, but is Lacy going to play and how well will he play? So maybe you can look at stars. I don't know. I want to have optimism, but why should I be optimistic? The Packers backed into the playoffs. The Redskins surged. They won 4 in a row. The Packers lost their last 2.
Right, and I see where you're coming from, and I understand your frustration. I'll try and help you with the whole optimism thing. We talked about how Washington tends to struggle on defense, and they've been winning because of their phenomenal Kirk Cousins play on their offense. And when I take a look at their secondary here, their 2 starting safeties are going to be D'Angelo Hall and Deshaun Goldson. There's no speed there involved, really. Those are 2 older guys, 2 veteran guys, hard hitters. But those are not guys with speed. So if you want to try the deep ball, I think this week may be it. Outside of Rashad Breeland, they really have nobody for corners to speak of either. Their linebackers are pretty good, and they have 1 pass rusher in Ryan Kerrigan, and that's about it. If you block Ryan Kerrigan, you have a chance. We talk about how poor the Packers' offensive line has been, and it's been bad. Just the injuries they've had to deal with, but I'm assuming Bakhtiari is going to play in this game, correct?
Yeah, as far as I know he is anyways. I would hope so. I mean, they'd welcome him back, certainly after the miserableness that has been the last couple of weeks. I believe he's on track to play. I can't comment on that for sure.
Well, I didn't see him on the injury report, I don't believe, so I'm assuming he's going to be just fine. So that means that everybody, I think they should have their normal 5 starting offensive linemen then, correct?
That would be true. Although Lindsley been playing at center lately. They've kind of been flip-flopping back and forth with injuries between him and Treader. But yeah, I believe everybody should be back. But even then, I keep saying the whole season, even if Rodgers gets time, and a lot of times he actually has gotten a decent amount of time, he's been sacked because it's a coverage sack, or he just has to throw it away because no one is coming back for the football, no one's disengaging, no one's fast enough to try to break off their route and just run deep so that Rodgers can try to fling one. Like you said, maybe you can take a deep shot, but to who? James Jones? I guess maybe Adam. If you throw the ball to Adam, you know he's going to drop it. Randall Cobb can't get open. Richard Rodgers has got to be one of the slowest tight ends in the NFL. Maybe they could bring out Jeff Janis. I don't know. He's at least fast.
I don't. Yeah.
He has no speed in the receiving corps whatsoever.
It's interesting. It's just amazing what one player meant to this entire football team. And we knew Jordy Nelson was a great football player. We've talked about this before in our previous podcasts of how he's been so important. But this whole offense is completely different without him, and it's just crazy.
I don't know. I guess the thing is, I've sounded all these pessimistic notes, but something inside me still has to pick the Packers. I have to, right? I'm contractually obligated. When we wrote up the idea for this show, I have to pick the Packers if it ever comes down to that, right? I have to be the loyal diehard here. I think they can maybe win this game. I don't know how they would do it. Maybe they could run. Maybe Lacy will have one of his random good games. That would be a way they could win this game, I suppose.
And I'm in the same boat as you, sort of, because I feel like it would be really stupid to pick against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, but I just, with the way I'm breaking things down in my mind, I just, like I said, I don't see where they're going to find their offense as much as because we're so just not used to what we've been seeing. I just don't know how they're going to stop Washington's offense either with Jordan Reed and Deshaun Jackson, as well as Kirk Cousins has played. And a few other Matt Jones is questionable for Washington, so we'll see if he plays. I mean, that's another good running back that Washington could use. He's been out the last few weeks. Alfred Morris has been on and off. Can I possibly take I don't know who to pick for this one?
I don't know. I think you kind of have to pick one. The thing is, I'm thinking about this, and it's sort of sad and depressing because the Packers' defense this year is actually a pretty solid unit. They've held, for the most part, teams to, I think they're top 10 in points allowed. They do up a fair number of pass yards. But if you want to look at just who's getting into the end zone and who's not, they've been pretty stingy. and they're in the upper echelon of the league, but it's paired with an offense that also can't score. So that's why they, it's kind of like the strength of the team used to be that offense that was amazing. You never knew and you held your breath for the defense, but now you have a defense that's actually solid against the run, gives us some pass yards, but doesn't give up a lot of points, and yet they might lose this game 17-14 because they just don't have any offense anymore.
I completely agree with you. That defense in Green Bay has been very much improved, and I'm impressed with how they've played, especially in the pass rush department. Mike Daniels has been flawless, and it's been great to see him grow as a player and earn that contract.
Peppers has double-digit sacks. You got Clay Matthews like you always do. Mike Neal can rush the passer as well. They have pieces that can get after the quarterback, and also some guys that can defend, but I don't know, who's going to score the points for the Packers? Maybe on defense? Look, I have to pick the Packers. I'm obligated to. I have to. Do I really think that they are going to win this game? I would be less certain on that, but I need to pick the Packers. It's like my job description.
Right, and this Redskins offensive line struggled at first. Brandon Scherf was really struggling, but they've gotten better, and Trent Williams is one of the best left tackles in football. We know that to be true. This offense is clicking on all cylinders. But I'm going to stay with you. I'm still probably going to pick Green Bay in this game. I just don't know how they're going to get it done.
I trust that they will.
I just trust Aaron Rodgers, I guess, to somehow find a way. I think Randall Cobb needs to get open because he needs to have one of those games where he takes over. We haven't seen Randall Cobb do anything in like the last 6 or 7 weeks. It's been that bad. So I'm going to pick Green Bay, but like I said, I don't know how they're going to get it done.
No, I was opening up the way for you to pick Washington, and that way, you can gain on me if we both if Washington manages to win this game.
I really do. I want to pick Washington, but I just can't. Just because picking against Aaron Rodgers is just dumb. Even though this game is going to be played in 58 degrees, it's going to be prime for the offense to continue to keep rolling for Washington. We're going to see. I'm still going to pick Green Bay though.
Okay, so we're disagreed on the AFC and apparently agreed on the NFC. It should be a fun week of wild card action in any case, because like I said, there are some teams that have to. Those AFC teams in Kansas City and Cincinnati have not won playoff games in our lifetime, so that's a moment of history you can look at. Actually, the Packers and the Redskins haven't played since 1972 in the playoffs, so that's kind of fun. And in the other case, we could have one of the coldest games in NFL history, postseason or otherwise, in Minnesota. So that might be some interesting kind of historical moments happening here in the NFL. People snapping droughts or continuing them and providing more misery for their fan base. Or maybe, we'll have miserable fans in Minnesota when it's -1 or whatever the temp will be. So, I don't know. It should be a fun wild card weekend. I always love this weekend and divisional weekend. I can't even pick between the two. They're both excellent. Football kind of all weekend long, Saturday afternoon, evening, and then Sunday as well.
Yeah, I wild card is definitely one of my favorite weekends of the NFL season, and it's definitely up there for me because it's exciting. We have so many question marks. The question marks talk about Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch and AJ McCarron, and if DeAngelo Williams is going to play. Can Houston, stop Ali and Houston from getting to Hoyer? A lot of question marks, and that's what I look forward to seeing every wild card weekend when we do this. But I think that just about wraps it up for us here at Students on the Game. A little shorter podcast than normal, which I'm sure you guys aren't unhappy about anyway. But we thank you for joining us on a special playoff edition. If you were curious about these matchups, now you know a little bit more